And we are live. Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn. He's the Padonis. Sorry, guys, I forgot to play the intro music, but we have a little bit of reason to celebrate. At least we're back in the winner's circle this week. We went 2-0 on our two best bets, both in the same game. Lots of talking points out of that game. It was the Bunnies one, of course. And that also brought home the mixed matchup, which snapped a losing skid there. We only went one multi this week with not too many games we felt strongly about. But I actually want to begin by talking about another multi, the collab multi, the five guys. And you know them well because we highlight each and every one of these guys, including the Padonis himself, five of our most beloved and gun tipsters from the group. And you guys are animals. 3 weeks ago, 21-1. And tell us about the multi this week, Padonis, which just got home with the game we just watched with the Dragons winning by 6 over the Tigers.
Yeah, so we had a fantastic Sunday afternoon with the last leg being my tip, which was the Dragons minus 3.5 on Dabble there. And it got home at 17-1. So we've hit 2 in the last 3 weeks. So the other legs we had Souths, we had points under in Canberra Warriors. We had Joseph Suwali, anytime try scorer. And he got over there just after halftime, just before halftime. And then the other tip, Dane's on fire at the moment. We had the Brumbies back-to-back again, plus 0.5, and they won outright. So it was a fantastic sort of little win again, even though the Dragons made us sweat for sure towards the end there, winning 12-2 and then conceding a try and then holding their line for a few sets just before the final whistle. But great to get a win and sort of reward all the followers out there.
Yeah, if you guys do follow us or if you join Dabble and you use the code TRIPOD, you'll automatically be following myself, Padonis, but also the other members of the five guys. Padonis, give each of the boys a shout out with what their Dabble handle is in case anybody wants to follow them.
Sure. So Dabble handle for Undertaker Matt is Undertaker Matt. Dane is Dane XV. We've got NRL Statsman. And then the final one is BJ Willie 1003. And of course,
as well as Padonis himself. Yeah. And I think in particular, Dane, he came on to the show and explained his thinking that he liked the Aussie teams in the Super Rugby and that the New Zealand sides might be overrated. And, you know, another underdog that he picked today, winning outright, winning by double digits. So in particular is on fire. And I think we gave Brent, who is the NRL stats man, a run this week in the preview. And he actually did tip the first game we're going to talk about, the Sharks with the handicap, which was unsuccessful. But luckily, you guys released the multi Friday, I'm pretty sure. So he reloaded, and I think he may have had the Souths pick, which was another one we liked. Suwali lent into the winning mood tip. We also got up the 2 out of 3 try scorers. I can't take any credit for the five guys multi, and it doesn't count in the pod stats. We've kind of decided that we won't count anything in pod stats that has got outside inputs, even though these guys are from our group, because it's a little bit out of our control, but we love to see it hitting. Over 100 people on it. Actually, I will take a little bit of credit for the five guys, because it was my idea to get you guys to come together and bring you guys together and said you guys should give out a collaboration multi each week. So I'm very proud, Podfather, watching that get home twice in the opening 2 months of the season. We're going to talk about each and every game, including obviously where we had a bet, but even in games where we didn't, what we learned. So let's rewind all the way back to Thursday night. Your Broncos, Padonis, 16-7 outright winners. As you said, they could do. And luckily we did build that into our mixed matchup, which got us on the right foot to start round 8.
Yeah, for sure. And also gave out in the podcast on Wednesday plus 12 on Neds and Ladbrokes, which was a $2 line at the time. I just felt that the Broncos coming into the game definitely had a chance, and the game sort of played out that way. The Sharks looked a bit flat. I'm not sure whether or not the last 2 weeks coming up against Melbourne and then Manly against two sort of top 8 teams, whether they just thought tried to maybe downplay the occasion. It definitely felt like the Sharks weren't there in the contest, and I thought Stags on Talakai was a great matchup. Stags definitely came out on top in that one and almost cements his Origin jersey pending Latrell Mitchell, I think. Obviously, Stephen Crichton's going to have something to say about that over the last few weeks, but I didn't think the Sharks were that impressive with the ball, and Brisbane defended resiliently. And once they got on top in the second half, they scored 2 tries in 5 minutes just after half time. And Brisbane sort of never let up, and the Sharks looked a bit desperate, made plenty of mistakes, and I think it's one of those games where the Broncos played well, and the Sharks will have to sort of rue their missed opportunities because they did have plenty of field position. They just couldn't capitalise.
Yeah, Staggs was great. He had a brilliant moment, which I thought was probably the key moment of the match. I wouldn't agree with you that he cemented his Origin jersey just because others are still going so well, such as Crichton. And I think Penrith have got Parramatta and Melbourne the next 2 weeks. If Crichton holds his own or stars in those games, he absolutely could still get a blue jersey. But Staggs will not look out of place. Before the game, Finucane, who was supposed to be back, actually did not end up getting a start. But Wade Graham was brought in from the reserves and got his first footy of 2022. So that was a positive for the Sharks. The key moment I'm talking about, where the Sharks were up 6-0 and the Broncos were under the pump defending their line, and Adam Reynolds copped some friendly fire, I think it was, smashed and split above the eye. He's down, blood's going everywhere. He has to go off. The Broncos hang on. I'm pretty sure a grubber in the in goal just hits the dead ball line before Brisbane plays at it. I think the bunker may have even overturned that one, and they got it right. And with only about 3 or 4 minutes left in the half and Brisbane down 6-0, they were willing to play some footy. Even with Reynolds off, they spread it wide, gave Staggs half a chance, and it was a half a chance at best. As I said, brilliant moment. He scores, sideline conversion slotted even with Reynolds off. Was it Gamble who might have drilled that? And it's 6-6. And yes, Brisbane then gave up a field goal, but it got him back in the match. And then when Reynolds came back on the second half, I feel like Brisbane controlled the game. It was a great tip by you to take the Broncos just when we were starting to say we've got to respect what Cronulla's doing. Maybe everybody overrated Cronulla a little bit too much. They weren't good enough in this one, and they had their opportunities. But again, Brisbane, they're not such a bad side this year at home and playing from in front. They were desperate. They defended well, deserved the win. At least we built it in as our kind of second most confident game of the round to go against the Sharks. And that helped us win the mixed matchup, although it won by a mile, but that's due to the events of that Friday night game, which we'll get to. But let's talk about the Titans-Panthers game, which is another one you liked as well. And I didn't back you there. We would have had a winner as well. The Panthers won 18-4, low-scoring game where, remember, guys, the line was 19.5. The halftime score in this game was actually Gold Coast 4-0. Did you actually at any point think the Titans could spring an upset, Padonis?
At halftime, they definitely felt like the upset was on the cards, given what we saw the last few weeks. We thought the Titans would come out hard, and they did. The Panthers made plenty of errors in that first half. And when Marju crossed off I think it was a bomb and a flick pass just before half time there, then the crowd was into the game. I go back to I think it was the 20th minute. Edwards scores to take the Panthers up 6-0, but it was called back for an obstruction. And then the Gold Coast gave them a second win in that second half. But look, after half time, Penrith were just a bit too clinical and showed their premiership muscle. And when the game was on the line, all their big players stood up. They scored 3 tries in that second half to win 18-4. The cover was never really in doubt if you were on the Titans. So hopefully people that sort of listened to us on Wednesday, we did lean them. And if you jump on that, great for you. You're smarter than us. It was one of those games where the Panthers were a little bit too classy in the key moments.
I suppose Luai scored with like 3 or 4 minutes to go. So you might have been a little bit nervous because the final margin was 14. One more converted try. We do see it. And if anyone's going to score a back-breaking late try, it could be the Panthers. And that's kind of my takeaway, that even though Penrith were well below their best, you still come out fearing them because they didn't score a point in the first half. And yet, as I said, they were still within a try of covering 20. Now, the Titans fought hard. That annoys us a little bit. We've had that happen a few times where a team has failed our best bet miserably, only to come out and play 10 times harder the next week. And you can't help but think, well, where was that a week ago? But nonetheless, the Titans try that you've referred to with Marzu, not exactly a bomb, but like a cross-field kick off a scrambling fifth tackle play where they kept it alive with several offloads. That was the only time they penetrated the Panthers' defense. The Panthers' defense is the story of this game today, because even though it wasn't all clicking for them in attack, they're just so hard to open up or to score against at all. And they're going to beat pretty much anyone off the back of that defense, even if it's not clicking in attack. And then in the second half, Cleary kind of took over the game, scored a try, set up to himself. And I want to talk about the 2 tries that Cleary set up, because I think that really demonstrates the difference between this Penrith side and the amount of repetitions and the chemistry that this squad has. We all see a game where the half has the ball and he's about to make a decision what to do, and you can kind of see an outside support runner pointing that it kicks on, and they point, they make the run, and then the half goes, oh yeah, kick could be on here, Grubber's in behind, and everybody reacts. Penrith don't show any sign at all. They do not preempt anything. Cleary gets the ball, first receiver, shapes to pass, but then just drops it on his boot, and the chaser knows the kick is coming. And they scored twice with Luai and Targo off the same play. And you can't replicate that if you're a team that doesn't have that kind of chemistry and that kind of understanding of what each other is going to do. So hard to stop them when, Cleary's got it on a string like that. I guess another case of what seems like a simple bet. Like a lot of people would have just gone, oh, well, I'll lay the points with Penrith here. The Titans are terrible. Penrith's relentless. It was a bit of a surprise as well, especially how close it was, and especially the fact that the Titans actually had the lead at halftime. I won't go as far to say the upset was on the cards, because I felt like you always sensed Penrith was coming. But hey, a first half lead, or a halftime lead, I should say, was a pretty big surprise. Now, the biggest surprise of the next game came in the 9th minute, and that changed everything. And look, we had 2 best bets, so we'll take it. Rabbitohs 40 beating the Seagulls 22, and our 2 best bets was Rabbitohs -3.5 or mechanical -2, but basically the 95% weight -3.5, and also over 3.5 tries, as well as we needed the Rabbitohs to score more than 7 points. So we won all 3. I knew that we had won all 3 bets the moment that Carl Lawton got sent off, to be fair, even though I wasn't saying that in the group, because the way it's been this season, I was not going to jinx anything. But it's a hard game to assess after that incident, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I felt exactly the same way as you. I think it was a fair send-off in the 8th minute there when Lawton had that spear tackle. And given that we did have 4 straight losing rounds, it felt a bit poetic that we had to sort of win in the first 8 minutes, where we got some massive luck in our favour. And I did feel that Manly were quite resilient, and Manly were a lot better than the final score sort of indicates. And if I feel that if the game was 13-13, I feel that Manly would have won the game. So from that point of view, we did get some luck, but it's great to sort of get that luck when Manly had a man down versus 13 all. And it's pretty hard to sort of take anything away from the game, because, as you said, Manly were down a man, and South, I don't know whether South also went into their shell a bit, thinking that they had a man advantage and they could play 70 minutes and pretty much win the game. So from that point of view, it's hard to look forward and think whether or not these sides will be better or worse heading into next week, in the next few weeks. But I'll happily take it. And, yeah, we move on to Saturday.
Yeah, that's incredibly bad luck if you were on Manly in any way, shape or form there, and very lucky on the Rabbitohs. And, saying what would have happened in that game if there was no send-off, that's pretty much like saying what would have happened in the game before the game. I mean, you don't know, because that moment changes everything. I will say Souths were really not too impressive, certainly conceding 22 points against 12 men. Some fascinating things out of this game, though. So that moment, and I agree it's a send-off, and I actually want to run an idea by you about the send-off rule. So hopefully I'll remember to say that. But the live line, mind you, pre-game, the line was -5.5, a little bit of money for the Rabbitohs, and they're getting a penalty and they're in attacking territory when that tackle takes place. So the live line was about -6.5. But the moment Lawton is sent off, it was -20.5. So you're seeing a 14-point line move on the back of that decision. So that's where, it felt like, all right, it's pretty much a certainty, because it kills a team to have to play a man short for 70 minutes. and I also do agree with what you said there. Like, I won't say, Manly probably would have won. The thing is, yes, Manly lifted, which you often see a team will lift when under adversity and when they realise their backs are against the wall. And you will often see a team kind of splutter a bit and muck around a bit because they know that they've got a man advantage. And instead what they should do is probably they need to be almost brainwashed into not knowing they're playing against an extra man and just play equally hard. But straight after that send-off, Rabbitohs took the 2, and then Seagulls came back and scored the next 2 tries. So then I wasn't certain. And I think the try that the Rabbitohs got right on the stroke of half-time off the back of a tap-out error, and he was terrible for Manly. Some people were saying they were playing with 11. But that try that got the game back to 16 all at half-time, I thought was crucial because I didn't want to go into that second half with Manly playing with a lead, and then you just don't know. Saab's a target for high kicks. You get one more try out of luck. You're hanging around in the game. So I think that try the Rabbitohs got in right at the end of the first half, and then they came out and it was Burgess who scored a barge over second half. And actually even then, at one point, the Seagulls pulled the game back to within 8 and were attacking. So that's why I'm saying, although the Rabbitohs scored 40, I'm not going to give them any credit, given all the circumstances. A more ruthless side should have won that game by 40 at least. Here's my idea I want to run by you. I agree with the send-off, although in the moment I thought it might have got 10. And the reason I thought they might have only gone 10 in the bin was because Murray, to his credit, got straight back up. I thought if Murray stays down and acts like it's a serious injury, or even could be, that the refs always react more harshly. Murray gets straight back up and you're thinking, clearly it's a shocker of a tackle, but maybe 10 in the bin's fair. But I think what really gets Lawton is that he drove as well. So it's the dangerous lift followed by driving his body, right? Having said all that, I think they should change the send-off rule. And the reason is because of the fact that it just kills the contest. And it's a shame for people watching Friday Night Footy. It's a shame for anyone who's a Manly fan. It's a shame for the neutral. And some people might say, well, no, it is a very harsh price to pay, but you've got to stop players doing it. I still think that you could tweak the rule and players still are definitely disincentivized to not get sent off. And I just think, what if one moment of madness, one really bad decision happens in the first 5 or 10 of a grand final or an origin game? We're here to entertain and we want to do the right thing by the fans. Some sports, soccer, you get sent off, it can be brutal, but it happens. Union, yeah, but other sports, which I think are very entertaining, NBA or NFL, they don't send anybody off. You get ejected, but you get to replace the player. So my suggestion, I run it by you and we'll move to the next game. You get sent off, 20 minutes. You're playing with 12. 20 minutes, that's double a sin bin. That's pretty harsh. After that, the bloke who's sent off is still gone. You can bring on an interchange. You're going to play with a short one interchange player, but you can replace. I think that 20 minutes is sufficient. And then the player still gets suspended. They can still get fined. Everything else can happen afterwards to really penalize the player. And you have hurt the team because that's still a significant period. They've got to play short, but you maybe haven't killed the game. Do you like that idea at all?
Yeah, I love it. And I called for it last year, something similar. I think that's the way to go. And the NRL should sort of look into that, I think. Yeah,
that's my suggestion. Happy to hear what you guys reckon as well. It doesn't happen very often, and I hate to kind of be that guy who comes up with the knee-jerk reaction just because something happened once, but I think it's actually a sensible suggestion. One other takeaway, Manly, although the game was all but lost in that moment, I think they'll take something out of that, the fact that they were brave, they were the better team for periods. I actually thought DCE, again, his kicking game was really good, especially when his team was not always on the front foot. Now, moving to Saturday, a really interesting one that came down to the final moment of the game. Could have gone either way, so probably a fair bit to unpack out of this one. So I bring it up on the screen if I can. Was the Warriors 21 beating the Raiders 20, and the Raiders were out in front in this one again, but they managed to find a way to choke again, Padonis.
Yeah, mate. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep, we got you. What did you think about this Warriors-Raiders match?
The last two games there, it was almost a day of upsets. I think all three underdogs won on Super Saturday there. And it was a great game, I felt, between Warriors and Canberra. Very tense, two sides that were desperate. in the first half, there was quite a few tries scored and felt like the score could have been anything. I think it was 14-12 after 20 minutes or so. And that was one of the legs we had in our 5 guys as well. We had under 42.5 points. So I was a little bit nervous there for a fair chunk of time. And I felt that Canberra threw the game away towards the back end there. It was 20-12. They had plenty of opportunities to either ice it or kick in the corners and make the Warriors come out of their own end. But they always seem to do it the hard way if you're a Canberra fan. And they made plenty of errors, gave the Warriors some cheap ball. And once I got to Golden Point, again, there was another error. I think it was in the first set after the Golden Point gave the Warriors easy field position. I think it was a forward pass that was called when Canberra were on their own 30. And then, Ice Sean Johnson nails another one, and the Warriors get the win there, 21-20.
That's why they bought him. I believe last year, 5 different occasions, Warriors had opportunities to kick field goals to win matches and did not win any of those matches. And they've already won twice off Sean Johnson's boot. It's funny, you spoke about the Raiders and how you feel they threw it away. All game, I thought the Warriors were trying to throw the game away. I couldn't believe the amount of self-inflicted Warrior wounds the whole game. Now, it was a strange one. Early lead to Raiders, 8-0. And for the rest of the game, the deficit between the teams was 8. Then Warriors scored a converted try back to 2. Then Raiders scored a converted try back to 8. And it was a halftime deficit of 8, 20-12. And yet your 5 guys multi gets up on under 42.5, partly because Raiders didn't score again. So Raiders are up 8 in the second half. Warriors pull it back to 2. Finally, after nobody scored for a significant amount of time in that second half. And then Matty Lodge, well, he felt high contact. He stayed down. They got the 2, which tied the game and sent it to Golden Point. But I felt like coming out of this game, the Warriors might be underrated because I couldn't believe how many times they just dropped the ball in the play the ball. They threw the ball into touch. They gave away penalties in possession. Lodge, he was the hero in that moment, but he was a villain earlier, raising the elbow and giving away a penalty in possession. Like, I just thought it had all the makings of the Warriors throwing it away, but it seemed like the Raiders were determined to outdo them and be that little bit worse. And once again, it's a lead blown and a game they absolutely should have won. So, I didn't really come out of this impressed by either team. It's obviously brutal for the Raiders, who can't remember the last time they won. They must have won a game in that comeback win against the Titans, which is a few weeks ago now. 20, whereas the Warriors have got 4 wins on the board now this season, and that's a huge one for them. The highs and lows, you let in 54 straight or 54-0 second half against Melbourne, and then 5 days later you come back and win. They could have had gallant defeats in both, and they'd have no competition points to show for it. So in a way, they got to be happy that they did respond. And Dejan Arce debuted for the club. He only arrived 3 days early, had 1 training session, and they just went through 12 sets or something like that, Brownie said. And he's huge. I think at one point kicks a 40-20, sets up a try. With Harris Tavita with that painful injury out for a few weeks, Arce is a welcome addition. Now, a really surprising result, one that will be interesting to unpack, and again, interested in others' thoughts as well. The Bulldogs getting a win. Speaking of sides that haven't won for a while, the Bulldogs hadn't won since the opening game of the season, but they got the win here at Accor Stadium, 16-12 over the Roosters. So we've got to talk about what we make of this Roosters side. Now, Padonis, I know you haven't rewatched this one yet. You were out and you've still got to catch this one. So I'll begin by giving credit to the Bulldogs, because I really think they defended very well throughout the whole game, and certainly playing in front. The longer the game went on, the belief was there that they had a chance to win this one. Flanagan has been a welcome addition. His kicking, although really the kicking, majority of it goes to Burton, and he came up with some pearlers. It's a joy to watch him kick the ball. Also kicked an unbelievable 40-20, and in the replay, it kind of looked like he just stabs at it. But I haven't seen anybody make contact with the ball, with the boot to ball like he does. And he came up with an absolutely clutch 40-20 late in the game. But Flanagan actually stands out to me for his defense. So this was a wild one where the Roosters were coming for the Bulldogs, quite similar to the Anzac Day clash, where after spotting the opponent a couple tries lead, They were trying to claw back into it. You can't blame Teddy. He had a monster of a game. I think he might add 300 meters. But the other key playmakers, Manu, very quiet. Walker, some uncharacteristic errors, coming up with the wrong play at time. Kiri looks to be trying to adjust to a new role. I don't want to bury the Roosters. I still deep down believe that they will elevate significantly. And I still think our future's multi on Dabble for the Roosters to make the top 4. The truth of the matter is they've won 4 out of 8, and top 8 have teams that have won 5 out of 8. Like, it's a long season. They've got improvement in them, but I'm glad we didn't go near them at all this week. Do you have any kind of takeaways from the game or anything you picked up?
It was pretty disappointing to see that final score, 16-12 there for the Dogs. And the other thing you touched on, not only the season multi, but also hurts our futures play on the Bulldogs to win the wooden spoon at 15-1, especially seeing the Tigers lose today, which we were hoping for. But yeah, the Dogs got 2 tries there at O'Carr. And a few weeks ago when Flanagan stepped in, I felt that improved the side, and it would take a little bit of time. But given the week that Dogs had, you saw all the stories on Tuesday and Wednesday where Gus came into training and sort of sent Barrett home and took over the sessions, there was going to be some reaction from the Dogs, and there was a great reaction. And the Roosters also felt they'd come into the game reacting well as well, given that they did lose on Anzac Day. But it felt the Roosters were just a step slower in every aspect, and the Dogs deserved to win that game. And even hearing the press conference after from Robinson, I haven't seen the highlights yet, but I heard his press conference, and he said that the loss is on us. And guys like Kiri were questioned by all the reporters. You're right. It definitely feels like he's in a new role in a transition period. And Robinson blamed himself, but he reckons they'll get it right. So we have to sort of trust that, because they have been there or thereabouts the last few years, and they've won a few comps the past 5 years. And we need the Roosters to make the top 4. So let's hope that they do rectify it, and then they get a big game next week against the Gold Coast to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not panicking yet. But when you say, we have to trust them, well, yeah, when you're cheering on a multi, but from a week-to-week proposition, that's going to be a very tough team to judge, because you see the talent in key positions, but it's not working right now. Again, did they just play teams like Bulldogs and Dragons, who on paper they should have beaten, but those sides really got up for it and had big games? I don't want to be a Roosters apologist. And I think they weren't good enough to win. But there were a bunch of key moments. There were a bunch of reviewed plays. There was a try given that was then taken away. I think they got most of the calls right, although there was one moment I just want to talk about that was a really key point when the Roosters were knocking on the door and trailing by 4 points. And Waria Hargraves got called for a knock-on. He challenged it. They looked at it a bunch of times. The commentators were making fun of JWH for challenging it, saying it was such a obvious knock on. But the truth of the matter is he spilled it forwards. He reached forwards. He dragged it back. It then hit his arm again and clearly went backwards. The bunker took 17 looks at it, finally agreed that he dragged it back, and then took one look at the second touch off his left forearm and said he knocked it on. And that went like half a meter back. And I saw Robbo just perplexed, but he didn't use that as an excuse. You can't look at specific moments as an excuse. I just thought, what is the point of the bunker, that someone looks at something in slow motion 20 times and still gets it wrong? And it did rob the Roosters of an opportunity there, but good on the Doggies. And Barrett, I felt like Barrett was in a no-win situation, because if they lose, it's another loss on his resume. As we said, it would have been 7 in a row. They win, everyone's saying it's a mastermind, Gould and the puppet master there. So
Tough
I think overall, yeah, but having said that, I watched Barrett on the sideline, how happy he was. I still think he'll take the win rather than a loss. The Eels got dealt a big loss up in Darwin by your North Queensland Cowboys. And sorry, guys, Padonis didn't watch this game yet either, but we will make sure he watches it in full very closely and see what he thinks of the Cowboys afterwards. I watched the game, and I tell you, zoomed in a bit too close. No one wants to see our faces that close. Parramatta just did not match the Cowboys' intensity. And you said, did the Sharkies underestimate their opponent and not give them enough credit on Thursday night? I think it's arguably a similar case happened Saturday night. Looked like the Eels did, just turned up thinking they were going to win, and they got their pants pulled down big time. This Cowboys side is riding a wave. again, we didn't have a lot of best bets, but I kind of give us credit along the way, having the right read in the Sharks game, not playing the Roosters when there might have been a temptation to do so after they failed us, not going against the Cowboys again. We did learn our lesson after a couple of unsuccessful results. And look, good on you if you played, the Cowboys upset. There's a couple people I saw called, or certainly people couldn't understand why it was a double-digit line for the Cowboys. They have not been respected enough this season. They're exactly the kind of team that you love to bet on if you can identify an underrated side. It's a drop ball by us not identifying this Cowboys side along the way, to be honest, because they're certainly each and every week they are exceeding my expectations. We know about a couple of the key players in this side. The Hammer came in off the bench. Drinky is playing exceptional at fullback, and the Hammer actually ended up scoring late as well. We know about Tamalolo, but what about Ruben Cotter? In the middle of the field, 54 tackles, 0 misses. And someone else will get credit as well, Robbie Farah. A week after we missed his tip, but he did call the upset with the Dragons over the Roosters on Anzac Day. He comes in now. He said he gave the Titans a chance at $7. Wasn't the worst call. He also tipped the Cowboys outright, and they were paying over $4 for their head-to-head win against the Eels. They won by 31. I reckon you could have had 200 guesses at what the full-time score, the exact score was going to be. You probably wouldn't have landed on Cowboys 35, Eels 4. Don't know if you heard anything in the wash-up of this one or have any comment, at least for the Cowboys fans out there, Padonis, before we move to Saturday.
If you're a Cowboys fan, your side has done exceptional, and they're sitting third on the ladder. It's making us cry, but it's definitely something that they're riding a wave of momentum, and let's see if it regresses. They do play a harder schedule in the next month than they have in the previous month, and they're 1-1 against teams that are in the top 8, and they're 4-0 against teams outside of the top 8. So it's definitely something to monitor, and we'll see if the Cowboys can keep it going. But Parramatta play a big game this week against the Panthers. So whether or not they were in a bit of a look ahead, maybe in hindsight it's easy to say that, but they had every opportunity to put in a good performance again off the back of a Sunday game against the Knights, and they didn't do that. But yeah, I think we can move on to the Sunday games.
Yeah, maybe there's some truth in that Eels dropped their intensity because they got such a cakewalk last week against the Knights, and they forgot about what the NRL level really takes. Did you say the Cowboys are unbeaten against bottom 8 sides? That I think you said that wouldn't be quite right with the loss to the Dogs in round 1. But they've had a relatively, not too difficult of a draw. But hey, we got to stop trying to knock the Cowboys. They deserve a lot of credit. They've played a lot better than we thought. But to give you guys some idea, the Cowboys are 3rd right now. What are the Roosters? From 7th, 8th? If anybody out there wants to bet me who finishes higher on the ladder and they want to take Cowboys over Roosters with how bad the Roosters have looked recently and how good the Cows have looked, let me know. I'm still that gives you an idea that as much as I know what I've seen in the last couple of weeks, I'm not overreacting to the point of the Cowboys are a top 4 side. We saw this actually. We saw something similar last season, and that was the St. George Dragons, who won 4 of their first 6. And then everyone's going, can't believe that they're 250 to make the 8 and all this. Sometimes teams get off on a hot start. Now it sounds like I'm taking away from the Cowboys. So I don't mean to. We've still got to judge them correctly moving forward, and we do need to upgrade them. So we'll do that. But let's move to Saturday and a side that we've got to downgrade. Again, the Knights scored 2, just not quite enough against the Storm, who put on 50 in Newcastle. And I would say this was probably looks like the most obvious bet of the weekend. You had the Storm that was the best team of round 7. And as I said, won their second half 10 tries to none. You had the Knights, who were the worst team of round 7. Now, maybe the Titans would give them a run for their money, but tryless in round 7 at home to Parramatta. So the logical bet was to lay the 20 points, and you could even get under 20 points. I saw the Undertaker today, and I want to give him a shout out too. He's part of the 5 guys. He's on outstanding form in his own tips in his own right. He's been killing it with player props, and he went under the knife. Some surgery last week, was in a hospital bed while he was tipping some of these results, and he tipped the Storm laying the chalk today, minus 19.5 by kickoff. It's 21.5. it's as easy as you like for a winner. It's not always that easy that the most obvious bet of the weekend wins, but it was that easy on this occasion, Padonis.
Yeah, and I think what sums up the Knights on the back of last week's performance, which was terrible, was a kick out on the full on the very first play of the game. And I think that sums up where they're at. A lot of question marks in that dressing room for the coaching staff. I feel sorry for the fan base, and I think they're going to sort of challenge the Tigers and the Dogs for the wooden spoon at the moment. And they might even be the favourite if you have to pick now who you think out of those three sides would come last at the moment. The Knights definitely have a lot to work on and improve, and Storm put in another clinical performance. He touched on 2 points wasn't enough. They needed 52 to win this game, given the sort of the start the Storm had. And again, they're ruthless. They make plenty of line breaks. And I still feel like the Storm didn't even get out of second gear in that game. That's how easy it was for them. It was a training run. And hard to take anything away from the Storm, just a clear downgrade again to the Knights.
The only reason the Knights got 2 points was because they happened to get a penalty 40 out from goal right on half time, so there was no choice but to take the two. Otherwise, they would have come up empty. And the funny thing is the Knights said all the right things in the interviews. They talked to O'Brien, who I put up a graphic that I was on the hot seat this week, but some other coaches have been as well. But O'Brien wasn't even on that graphic. I don't know who originated it, but he has to be, among all coaches, probably under as much pressure as anybody, because they said all the right things. We need to do better by our fans that come out and spend their time and spend their money to come out and support us. We weren't good enough last week, and they're arguably even worse in this game, whereas Melbourne said all the right things too. We're going to start again. We're not going to try and just continue playing the game against the Warriors. Like, we really want to be focused and not get ahead of ourselves. Well, they walked the talk, or they walked the walk, I should say. They backed up the talk. They were ruthless, but you mentioned it, like the Knights, the kickoff's out on the full. They don't actually touch the footy till 10 minutes into the game. 26-2 halftime. Second half, come out, don't catch the kickoff. It bounces out. So the Storm's on the attack again. O'Brien's head is in his hands, and the Storm just piled it on all day and barge over tries on the try line. I mean, that Olam try, if you guys didn't see the highlights, he caught the ball flat-footed. There was nothing on. There was no overlap. He literally came to a stop and then just decided to throw three people off him and ran and scored 20 meters out. Like, it was embarrassing at times to watch, I'm sorry to say. So, a couple of our most important people behind the scenes, Jeff and Dan, our admins, one's a Cowboys fan. He's laughing, and then poor Dan, a Knights fan. Tough times, I tell you. And he thought things might look up when they got rid of Pierce.
Sorry, just one last thing on this game. Last year, if you guys recall, on the pod, we tipped Pappenhausen as top point scorer. And this year feels like it's almost a shoo-in at the moment. And last year he got injured when we did tip it. And I think at the start of the season, he was $12 before any ball was kicked. And Garrick was a $2.20 favourite. And now look at how fortunes have swapped. The Storm just look absolutely ruthless, and Pappenhausen kicking goals for fun and scoring tries for fun. So good on everyone for getting on that. The pod.
Well, you might have just annoyed some people, because I know you watch that game. It seems like Pappenhausen didn't score. The one he did score got overruled. And I know that if you had a same game multi and you thought the Storm were going to steamroll the Knights, the one leg you probably lost was just assuming that Pappy would get in on the action. So you probably annoyed some people. But I know what you're saying. He is carving up the competition. How could he not be top point scorer of the season, apart from an injury? I don't know. If he got picked for all 3 games for New South Wales, would he miss 1 or 2 out of that? It probably still wouldn't be enough. He's got more points than several teams in the competition have at this point. Now, we've got one more game to recap, but I haven't brought in the bookie recap. Now, Tristan usually tells us that they didn't go that well, but I will refuse to believe if that's the case this weekend with a few upsets. Let's hear the bookie perspective for round 8 from Top Sport.
A tripod family, Tristan Merlihan here from Top Sport. Massive amount of upsets in the week just gone. The Broncos obviously getting over the top of the Sharks. The Bulldogs and also the Cowboys having some big wins. The Knights obviously nowhere near it. I'm just recording this as this game is close to finish with 1 game left for the round. So we had good results on both the Bulldogs and the Cowboys and the Sharkies game too. Actually, the other game, the punters got on top of us, but with a number of shorties going down like that, it was a successful weekend from our point of view. The game that really piqued my interest was the Rabbitohs and the Seagulls, where the Rabbitohs coming away comfortably, obviously covering the spread, but Manly doing a pretty good job for large parts of that game despite being one man down. So Tripod punters will be happy with the Rabbitohs getting the result very comfortably in the end against the Sharkies, and so a mixed matchup, hopefully back to a little bit of form there. Well done for all the punters there that have stayed loyal. I know it's been a bit of a barren run, but shows, Jacob's obviously done this for a long time. So, back into a bit of form, and we'll see if it can continue. But yeah, next week's going to be fascinating just to see how a few of these games pile up. I'm really excited for the Panthers-Eels game. The Eels got a bit to bounce back after last week as well, and then just scrolling down a few of these other games too. One that probably wasn't going to be a blockbuster, but maybe it looks like it could be a bit tighter than everyone thought now, might be the Roosters against the Titans, with the Titans showing a little bit of form there against the Panthers for long parts of that game, and the Roosters just dropping off a touch in recent weeks. So plenty to look forward to. Hope everyone back to winter over the weekend, and we'll chat to you during the week.
So Tristan's alluding to the Roosters needing a downgrade. Now he says, people staying loyal. I should ask him, because this week for the mixed matchup, after a couple of requests, and I say fair enough, bet on whatever you want to bet on, people wanted the option to bet against the mixed matchup. So you actually had the choice. So I'm sorry if you went against the pod, you had a 7-40 loss. But, I don't think of it like you're loyal if you're backing our tips. Like, back what you believe. We just try and make the case. We're not always right, that's for sure. But we're happy to at least get a couple of winners out for the people who do trust us. One more game to go. The game we just watched, it brought home your 17-1 Five Guys multi. It was the Dragons 12-6. And I should say, of all the plays that we nearly gave out, and you liked the Titans and Broncos, and I didn't get over the line there with you. And this was the other one I really liked, was Dragons. And I think -3.5 on Wednesday was $1.79. So we just didn't quite get, we didn't want to lay the 4.5 because we thought maybe money would come for that. And then on Friday, I said to you, you can find $1.80 on the Dragons. And you had actually tipped it in your Five Guys. We thought, $1.80, yes, we can classify that as a best bet, but we really need to feel strong. And we felt it would be the first late play to give out. Ultimately, you guys don't want to hear, the whole tale of woe about another best bet left on the table. We didn't give it out. I'm glad that it at least was the anchor for the Five Guys multi. But your takeaways, Padonis, they made you sweat a little bit in the end.
They made us sweat. It still gave us a reason to cheer on the Dragons, and I'll take the hit on this one because you felt more strongly on them than I did. The Tigers and the Dragons both came off 2 straight wins, and I felt it was going to be a bit of a letdown spot, and it's felt that way for large parts. Plenty of errors and good defense and not very good attack. I just felt that the Dragons were a bit stronger in the key moments, and in the second half they got on top, and physically I think they bullied the Tigers in that second half. And once the first try went over to Ben Hunt there, then the Tigers lost a bit of wind and a bit of energy. But let's just talk about in the first half there quickly at 2-0 or just before 2-0. I thought that it was a try to the Tigers, to be fair. I think, who was it? Talangi went up there.
Was it Tuolangi? I thought he dropped it. I thought he did drop it cold.
Oh, okay.
In my opinion. So I don't think it was certain. And I mean, they looked at it. Those are the ones they've got to get right when they get to look at it in slow-mo.
Yeah, for sure. And then if you're calling Lomax for a tackle in the air and giving a penalty, then is it not a penalty try?
Now I actually had the exact same thought, because he did only spill it an inch from the ground and he got tackled in the air. So I agree. It's never been ruled that way, but I agree. It's foul play, tackling a player in the air, which has only been the rule's been changed in recent seasons to make it safer. But yeah, they ended up getting a penalty, which they took the 2 from. There were other moments in the game where I thought the Tigers should have just taken the 2 again. In the first half, they could have gone up 4-0 again in the second half, because it was that kind of game. There was no try, but I felt like it was going to come down to a key player to take over the game, and the best player on the field was Ben Hunt, and he ultimately scored the try that put him in front. And as you say, maybe that broke the Tigers' spirit a little bit. Sullivan scored the late try that was ultimately the clincher. So he came on, played dummy half for McCulloch. Amon played 5/8 because Bird was out. We said that would be an upgrade, if anything. Here's what I was thinking about line value. The Dragons were only -4.5 today at home to the Tigers. Well, the Dragons were at home to the Sharkies a few weeks ago, and the game was nearly pick'em. When the Sharkies were at home to the Tigers, the Sharkies were 18-point favourites. So look at how much those lines have come together. Now, I know that like you add Hastings to the equation, and maybe there's a little bit of a Dragons downgrade, but that's probably why I felt Dragons are still the better side to the Tigers. Having said that, the Tigers got repeat sets late and, could have forced golden point. Or depending on what bet you might have had with the spread, more likely thing would probably be Tigers score out wide and then don't hit the conversion but lose by 2 and kill your -3.5 on the Dragons. So we're very glad that didn't happen. We're glad that we had a little bit of success this week, something for us to build on. And those were our key thoughts for round 8. But, we won't get ahead of ourselves at all. We're still humble for a very good reason. And even the game, which was, very decisive for us, we can't say we got right because we got an enormous stroke of luck in the first half, but we'll certainly take it. We'll build on it. We'll be back Wednesday to preview round 9. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you then. Lego.